Hello and welcome. We headed north to the mountain cabin, and while checking the weather for packing and planning and all of that, I discovered that there would be a few rainy days as well as some cool mornings. So I decided to pack accordingly, and that meant for me choosing all mysteries. I like to joke that I am really good at packing. I pack just enough clothes and never enough books. But this time, I packed a full basket of mysteries only. This meant that I bailed a little bit on my reading plans for the month of July, but I have included a couple that have been on my radar and that I've said that I wanted to read, as well as kind of packing in more mysteries around that. So I wanted to start this video with sharing with you what I have brought up here, go through each of these mysteries just really quickly, and then just kind of at whim or based on my mood, decide which ones I'm going to read and then just read them for the week. So I hope you'll join me as I spend the week in the mountains reading only mysteries. To start off with, first, I have Martin Walker's Bruno, Chief of Police. I found this recently at a library sale. I also have the second book. I didn't bring the second book because I really want to kind of have varied reading experiences. I don't want to get all caught up in a series. So I just brought the first one. If I like this one, I will continue on the second one. In this, we have Bruno. He is the chief of police of a very small French village. And I believe that this is going to have some diving into history and also political ramifications within this murder mystery. I'm mostly looking for the French village vibes. It also talks on the back about how there's a juxtaposition of this mystery case as well as food descriptions. So I'm here for the food descriptions and again, the French village. So Bruno, Chief of Police, really is at the top of the list because I have been wanting to try this series out for a while. Next, I have an ECR Lorac that I just grabbed because it has this really summery looking cover on it. This is Post After Post-Mortem, an Oxfordshire mystery. This is her Inspector MacDonald series. I have had this on my TBR so many times, so I really need to just pick it up. I actually hit a Libro FM audiobook sale a couple months ago and got a whole bunch of ECR Lorac, so I just really need to commit to reading these. But this is based on the Surreys and their 5 children who have a prolific writing machine with thrillers and reviews and other writing under their name, and the whole household converges at their Oxfordshire home, and they spend some weeks there writing together, and then they discover that Ruth, one of the 5, has passed away by her own hand is the theory. And I think that there are people who think that that is not the case. So Inspector MacDonald gets involved in this. So I think she writes these so you can kind of jump in and out wherever in his series. So I hope that's the case, but I did just love this British Library Crime Classics cover and grabbed it. This is the book that was on my TBR for this month, and that is The Murder of Mr. Wickham by Claudia Gray. This is a Regency era Jane Austen mashup, meaning all of the main characters in all of Jane Austen's books meet together, and there ends up being a closed mansion murder mystery, and that is obviously the murder of Mr. Wickham. So all of the main couples are there. It definitely spoils each of the Jane Austen books, so if you haven't read them and you want to, you'll want to read those before you dive into this. But we already know which couples end up together, who gets married, what kind of some of the twists are. The thing that I'm excited the most about this is we have the second generation, so we have the children of those couples and kind of what's happened in the marriages. She gives us a timeline at the front of this, I noticed, that tells us kind of how she's looking at how things are written. So we're starting with Pride and Prejudice and ending with Sense and Sensibility. And so the marriages in Sense and Sensibility are the newest, whereas in Pride and Prejudice, that those relationships have been going on for, I think, almost, about a decade or more. So that is The Murder of Mr. Wickham. I've been excited to get into this series for a while, and it is high time. Then I brought the second book in the T.E. Kinsey Lady Hardcastle series. I've read the first. I really enjoyed it. This one looks very springy or summery, and that is In the Market for Murder. So, it says on the back that it's spring. This one starts with Lady Hardcastle recovering from some injury, and she is still staying in this manor that is out in the country that she is, I think, renting from a friend or leasing from a friend. And I think another murder happens. I love Lady Hardcastle. She is an older heroine. She's got her ride or die housekeeper, Flo, who is tough as nails. They're just such a great combination together. And I really enjoyed this series, and I want to continue in it. This is a bit of an outlier. It's a little bit of a historical mystery. This is The Briar Club by Kate Quinn. I grabbed this in a Barnes & Noble. They had a sticker that said 30% off on one of their tables. I love finding books that way because it just feels like their overstock means that I get a good deal on a book. So this is set in 1950s in a boarding house in Washington, D.C. We've got women who are all renting rooms in this boarding house. There's a murder mystery, and so we're trying to figure out who done it, as well as getting into the stories of all of the women who are living in this boarding house. I think this is probably a pretty grisly murder, and I also think that there are a lot of very hard topics that women were facing during this time period, and so I don't think this is a light, fluffy read by any means, and it's also pretty thick, but again, I've had it on my TBR for so long, I thought having this mystery week is the perfect time to open that up. I have a second ECR Lorac. This is Death of an Author. This is one that I mentioned within this spring that I wanted to read, and I still do. I've actually started it a little bit. You can see where the bookmark is. So I really do want to get into this. This one seems so fascinating to me. We have a writer who has a pseudonym, which is really interesting because I am reading Miss Bunkle's book, and it just, I don't know, they seem to go together. So in this we have Vivian Lestrange, who is a recluse author, and he turns up missing, and then later his housekeeper turns up missing. I think there's some question about, is Vivian Lestrange actually the author, or is it actually a female who I think represents him? So I think there's a lot of like mistaken identity, confusion about identity, and missing persons in this. So I'm just really looking forward to this. I would love to read this and try to figure out who did it. I will do that with those, but it's something I like to do with ECR Lorac, is really kind of try to dive into the psychology of it to figure out who did it and not just go along for the ride, but really go about it in a meticulous way. I also grabbed Death on a Summer Day by Benedict Brown. This is the Lord Edgington series. I have not read this one in order at all. He does say at the very beginning that it's okay. He writes these in a way that you don't have to read any of them in order. I do think I have the first I have the E version of the first book in this. It's like Murder at a Spring Ball. But I could not resist this Summer's Day cover. And again, since he says you can read them out of order, I'm sort of taking his word at them. Benedict Brown as an author just really includes so much information as background. He's got historical facts. He's got this character list. He's got things that happened during that time period, all published within this. I think it's an indie publisher or self-publishing process. And so he's able to put whatever he wants in his books, and there is just a plethora of information in here. So I was just really drawn to this cover. I just feel like this looks like summer, and it reminds me of, All Creatures Great and Small in the Dales. This is where I want to be. So I threw this one in my basket. And then last but not least, I have a Colleen Cambridge, A Trace of Poison. This is the second book in the Phillida Bright series. Phillida is Agatha Christie's, now Agatha Malawan's housekeeper. I have read the first one. I enjoyed it enough to pick this up from the library. I grabbed it on my way out of town so that I could include this in my mystery book stack. This, I think, is a pretty lighter, mystery read. I don't think there's a lot of subterfuge. I think it's just this, cozy Agatha Christie mystery. So this one obviously deals with poisons, which we know Agatha Christie was very skilled at due to her involvement with her husband and the war and all of that. So she's very highly trained in poisons. So I would expect that Colleen Cambridge has done a lot of research in this to make sure that she is on point and correct in all of her characterizations of poisons and what they do and kind of how this all unfolds. So this is obviously 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, too many books for a week. I don't think with everything else I have planned I can read one book a day, but I am hoping to make a really good dent in this stack, and I hope that you will join me as we continue through. My plan is to read them and then to give you my review right in this video. The first one that I want to share with you that I've read is Martin Walker's Chief of Police Bruno. This is the first book in the series. I'm so glad that I have the second book at home so that I can just continue through the series. It was definitely a great choice. So we have Bruno. He is, as I mentioned, a chief of police of a village in France. The murder, just as a content warning, is really described in gory detail at the beginning of chapter 5, if you want to skip through that. It is referenced later, so you'll kind of get the gist of what happened, but it's very gory at the beginning of that chapter. So this is a little bit more descriptive as far as the actual, brutal act than what I normally gravitate towards. But I was so fascinated with the political history in France with regard to fascism and Nazism, and also just the political establishment as far as how it was in the past and then how it is now. So, in this, they're still fighting against people who are anti-Muslim and anti-anyone who looks different from them. And so that Martin Walker definitely addresses that in this book. Bruno himself as a character is really great. He's definitely a stand-up moral guy. There is a romantic interest in this. So I wouldn't say that it's open door romance, but you definitely know what's happening. She's spending the night with him, and so we kind of get the feeling for that. So this was really great. I think my favorite part was the village life. I also really liked the food description. So as Bruno's kind of traveling throughout the village and meeting people, he's going to other people's houses for meals, and we're getting that description in here of the meals that he's preparing and that others are preparing, and that part is really great. I do think that the mystery is very compelling. I was not able to guess who had done it. I do think, looking back, there definitely was a clue, but I kind of had glossed over that and maybe thought it was related to something else. It was not really kind of a thriller. It's definitely more gory than I'm used to, but not thriller. I wasn't terrified reading it. So really great. Definitely want to continue the series. Next, I will tell you about A Trace of Poison by Colleen Cambridge. This is the Phillida Bright second book in the series. So this Phillida Bright is the housekeeper of Agatha Christie, now Agatha Malawan. She married Max, who is, I believe, an archaeologist. And Phillida is the head housekeeper at Malawan Hall, where Agatha Christie now lives with her second husband. But she doesn't really seem to be doing much housekeeping. She does keep the household in line, but she is spending all of her time solving the mystery, and that is at Agatha's behest.
I promise that my detectives shall well and truly detect the crimes presented to them, using the wits which it may please me to bestow upon them, and not place reliance on, nor make use of, divine revelation, feminine intuition, mumbo-jumbo, jiggery-pokery, coincidence, or act of God. Oath taken by members of the Detection Club.
Agatha is not really involved very much. We don't see her very much. She is definitely a shyer and maybe more timid character than what I would think that she is, but we obviously want Phillida to shine. So I really believe that Phillida Bright is very similar and based after Hercule Poirot. She talks about her gray matter working. She's very pragmatic. She's egotistical about her skills and like that she's going to be able to figure this out. I will say, for the shortness of this book, there were a surprising amount of murders that were happening. Like, we would come across somebody and they were dead, and then somebody else, and then it just was a lot. I was sort of able to figure out who it was. You'll have to read it to see what I mean by that, but I definitely was on the right track. This one I did discover spoils The Door by Mary Roberts Reinhardt, which I was kind of surprised at. It didn't spoil the murder of Roger Ackroyd either, but there definitely it was mentioned a couple different times with a specific reason, and so it's not technically spoiled, but it could be. So that is a warning for this series. If you haven't read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd or The Door by Mary Roberts Reinhardt, you might want to before picking that up. So that is A Trace of Poison. And then the third one that I have gotten to is The Murder of Mr. Wickham. This is by Claudia Gray. This is the first book in a series. This series is basically a Jane Austen mashup. So Claudia Gray has taken all of the characters in all 5 of Jane Austen's novels and thrown them all together into various settings and scenarios. And this is the first one. And I think you can tell that it's the first one. My hope is that it gets a little bit more cohesive. This did feel a little bit kind of all over the place as far as the characters and what they were going through. You definitely want to read the Jane Austen books first because it will spoil who ends up together. It spoils other things too as well. I will say there really were a lot of characters, and even though I'm familiar with them in the Jane Austen books, I think I've compartmentalized them, knowing how they fit into each story, and so reading them all mixed together did feel like there were a lot of characters. And we had 2 young people who were the second generation who were kind of the sleuths that we were following. And there did seem to be a lot of like, well, maybe it's this person, then we go follow them, and then maybe it's this person. So it did feel a little unfocused, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. So with The Murder of Mr. Wickham, we have all of our favorite characters, couples from our Jane Austen novels, and then their children. So we've got that second generation, and then we have Mr. Wickham who shows up on like a dark, thundery night. This is definitely a locked mansion mystery. You know, I definitely, as I was reading it, I was like, I'm not 100% sure who did it. Like, how can one of our favorite characters from a Jane Austen novel do this? I thought, is it the staff, the household staff, the butler, the servants? But we really didn't know them or get to know them well. So it seemed like it would be out of left field if that was who it was. So it was interesting to see how Claudia Gray was able to share who did it. Obviously everyone had motive for killing Mr. Wickham, that he was like connected to everyone. So I just thought it was a very clever book. I do love the cover, and I definitely want to continue this series. I'm having so much fun picking which mystery I want to read and reading them throughout the week. So it's been a blast. So I'm really glad I chose these books to bring along with me. But I don't have the next books in any of these series with me, and so I'm just going to start fresh on a new mystery next. I have finished In the Market for Murder by T.E. Kinsey. This is the second book in the Lady Hardcastle series. The first book is A Quiet Life in the Country, if you are interested in looking for this series. I really like Lady Hardcastle and also Flo, who is her sidekick, her housekeeper, but very much a sidekick. I definitely preferred the first book in this series to In the Market for Murder. So, my biggest kind of frustration with this is there were a lot of characters. So, we're still in the same village, from what I can tell, that we were in the first series, where Lady Hardcastle is renting this kind of big estate to stay in out in the country. We start this book with her kind of recovering from an injury. She ends up going to a cattle market, which I don't know that much about. Kind of feels like the Dales to me, also, of All Creatures Great and Small, when we've got these farmers and like the different names of the farms. It just very much, I was picturing the Dales that I see in the new All Creatures Great and Small. There also was this other rugby involvement and mystery. And I don't know that much about rugby. And so that, I don't know, it just felt like it was not as relatable for me as the first mystery in this series. There also was a seance, and so that was kind of intriguing. I know seances used to be a really popular thing in England, and so I think that was kind of a tie into that. So there were a lot of moving parts and pieces. There were a lot of characters. It turns out that there were multiple mysteries that we were kind of trying to solve and trying to figure out, are they related? Are they unrelated? So there just was a lot going on in this. I still want to continue the series. I love Lady Hardcastle and Flo's relationship. It's by far my favorite part of this. They are just so symbiotic as far as their different personality traits and kind of the way they go about things and how they kind of play off of each other and say, okay, you go do this and I'll do this. That part I loved so much, continue to love. And I think it's probably the driving factor for why I definitely want to continue this series. And then the last book that I have that I've read this week, so this is the fifth book if you're counting, is Death on a Summer's Day. This is by Benedict Brown. This is in the Lord Edgington series. These are 1920s mysteries, and our author, Benedict Brown, says right in the front that these are books that you can read as standalones. He tries really hard not to have any spoilers. I did notice a couple odd statements that I think are related to some of the books earlier in this series that I haven't read. This is actually the third book. I've also read the fourth book, but I really do find that I can read them as standalone. I do want to read the first two, however. He does leave so many notes in here. There's a whole character list. There are language, like a dictionary for these are the phrases that were used. He gives you information about historical happenings during the 1920s, during the times that this is written. There actually is a map in the front, which I also really enjoyed looking at. And we are set in the Lake District, which is one of my favorite places. I know I talked about the Dales, love the Dales, but when I go to England again, I want to really spend a lot of time in the Lake District. I also want to share, there was just this really wonderful section that I want to read to you all. I longed to explore the wild expanses of the Yorkshire Dales, and perhaps compose a few poems on their beauty or discover the secret garden for myself. In fact, as I crossed the country of my birth, I realized that it was one great tapestry of not just fields and forest, but stories. We'd left behind the land of Charles Dickens and made it as far north as the kingdom of the Brontes. England was an anthology, and for each region, countless fine writers had added to its pages. And yet it was the Lake District itself which I was most excited to visit, the inspiration for William Wordsworth and Beatrix Potter alike. It was not just the intrigue of grandfather's ancient mystery which drew me there, but the very idea of such a land. The place had always sounded mystical to me, like some imaginary region within Peter Pan's Never Never Land, and I'm glad to say that it didn't disappoint. Benedict Brown goes on to describe the nature and the setting in just such a beautiful way. So it's one of the reasons why I am finding that I really, of all of the series that I have read this week, I really love Benedict Brown's writing. I feel like it's accessible. I feel like you don't have to think really hard. He had basically 5 characters in this locked mansion murder mystery, and there were a couple add-ons, let's say 3, so 8 people, as well as the grandfather, who's the retired police superintendent, and his grandson. So we got 10 people, and that is it. It just felt very contained, not only in the murder mystery, but also in the character list, so that you're not feeling overwhelmed like you might in some other books. I also liked the mystery itself. So we have a past history mystery of a death that has gone unresolved, and it changed the grandfather's trajectory. He was on track to go to Oxford, and instead he became a policeman and had a very successful career at that. And so he's back revisiting this group of people that he kind of grew up with, basically, that there was a murder, and it really kind of separated all of them. There also ends up being a murder while at this estate for this weekend. And so we're also, again, trying to figure out, are these murders all related, or are they just 2 separate murders? And so we're trying to unpack all of that. I know when I first read this series, I was a little annoyed with the grandson. He's definitely the sidekick, and he's always making mistakes, and he's learning, and the grandfather like just knows things and has an intuition. And so it's definitely in there where it's like you're feeling like, well, why does the grandfather know all of this? And we're kind of just going along with the grandson, trying to figure out what's going on. Since this is the second book that I've read in this Lord Edgington mystery series, I feel a little bit more settled to it, and it actually, I think they played well off of each other. This author has also written other books in other mystery series, so a lot of fun. This might actually be my favorite one that I've read this week. So let me know, of the books that I brought along, which ones you would have read, which ones maybe you're disappointed that I didn't pick up. It doesn't mean I won't ever, but I just didn't get time. Let me know that. And then also let me know what your favorite murder mysteries are. I am definitely interested in kind of branching out and learning more about what you guys like as far as mysteries. So thanks so much, you guys, for watching, and until next time.